Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and delighted and honored always to have back with us our good friend, John Gizzi. He's the chief political correspondent for Newsmax and a walking political encyclopedia, just an all-around good guy, and I think I owe him a hamburger. Hi, John. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, Perry, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
And as Scripture says, oh, no man.
There we go. Well, I think I do owe you a hamburger, though. Next time we get together, it's on me, buddy. Hey, okay. It's a new day with the press corps at the White House. What's your take, buddy?
Well, I will tell you something. As it is with previous changes of administration, just seeing a new person behind the podium is interest enough to pack the James Brady briefing room at the White House. I think you've seen it in a few of the reports and broadcasts on Sean Spicer's first days.
Yeah.
I will say this. His style is very different of that of his predecessor, Josh Earnest. Josh, you will recall, called on people, gave very long, detailed answers to questions. I always said I could write a whole story from one answer of Josh's. Sean is quick and to the point, and he's starting to allow follow-up questions, but he covers most of the room. I was happy to see he got most of the foreign correspondents in because they tend to be overlooked. So it's interesting, and it is not the start of a series to be entitled Beat the Press.
Do you miss the front row seat?
Not really, but there's a lot of time for that. You know, we keep hearing about changes, about possibly going into a larger room in the old executive office building, but keeping the offices and desks and with it the access in the White House. So I just don't know what the seating order will be. I'm perfectly happy to stand right there because I have a feeling I'm going to be called on.
Good for you. I expect you will be. So what do you think about the pushback from the Trumps during the campaign, now the administration, on the media, and in particular fake news and being called out by it? I mean, this is a new day.
It is a new day, but also remember something. There was all talk that the press briefings, as we know it, were going to end, or that they would be held irregularly. That has not happened yet, and Sean Spicer is just sort of feeling his oats, getting his sea legs on the job behind the most famous podium in the world. In addition, it was said that there would be reaching out to people who tweet and use Facebook, and that they would have the same status as those of us who sit there and wait to ask questions in person. Well, to his credit, Sean Spicer has created 4 seats related to Skype seats, they're called, so that people who are not normally there can Skype in. But I think the most refreshing side is that front row, as you called it, the usual occupants, are not necessarily the first called on. Are they recognized? You bet they are. But we also found the New York Post, for example, being called on. And just yesterday, my friend Anthony Harper, a Christian pastor from Idaho who had a day pass at the White House, was called on to talk about the treatment of Jewish children in UN-run schools. Not a topic we hear about a lot at the White House, and certainly not one's normal questioner. I was glad Anthony got his question in.
Very, very interesting. So what do you think about a tweeting president going around the press?
Well, I have to tell you something. At first, I thought it was odd. And listening to my car radio this morning, I heard that he tweeted about the Supreme Court nominee, that he'll announce his choice next Thursday, which meant I had to edit my own story that was up. I thought it was going to be Monday based on Sean's briefing yesterday. That said, remember something, Perry. Imagine for a moment this was 1933, and you were asking me, what do you think of a president who goes on the radio every weekend to talk to people? It would be considered unusual.
Yeah.
And remember, Trump has over 30 million followers, at least. So he communicates with them. I'm not sure I exactly like communicating a big message in 140 words. The joke around the White House press room is Trump will not deliver a State of the Union message. He'll just tweet, State of the Union is fine, legislation to follow, and leave it at that. But I'm happy to say he accepted Speaker Ryan's invitation to address a joint session of Congress on February 28th.
Wow. Okay. There you go. February 28th. All right, John, you being the political historian that you are, this has been an incredible election, an election cycle. There is a mood that this administration tapped into. They tapped into the mood of the country in a big, big way. One of the biggest turnovers, 31 out of the 50 states, majority of the counties out there. Very unusual. What's your take? I haven't had a chance to ask you that question yet.
Well, where do we start on this? For one thing, Pennsylvania was always considered fool's gold for Republican presidential candidates. And not far behind it were Michigan and Wisconsin. And they all fell into the Republican column, albeit narrowly. Ohio, which Barack Obama carried 4 years ago, sealing the fate of Mitt Romney, not only went for Trump, but did so by 11 points. Florida fell into the Republican column as well. All told, Donald Trump did not lose a single state that he had to win, and then won 5 more that put him over the 300 electoral vote count. Now, that was done in large part because angry voters turn out for him in a very big way. Barack Obama had record turnout among Black and Hispanic voters 4 years ago, and single women, and they punched above their weight, so to speak. In this election, lower income Americans, blue collar workers, and others joined with some but not all traditional Republican voters and gave him his 300 votes in the Electoral College. One more thing, and let me editorialize for a bit, Perry.
Sure.
As much as I enjoy the president's tweets and find it a unique way of communicating, I wish he would not dwell on things like voter fraud and saying that he would have won the popular vote had there not been fraud. And today he said, we will investigate that. Look, as a supporter of voter ID and someone who believes it should be called voter reform, I'm sure there are some cases of it. But the man was elected. He won the electoral votes. He revolutionized the kind of campaigns Republican won. California is the largest state in the union, okay? The most populous state. Hillary Clinton concentrated on that. Democrats go there regularly to raise their big dollars, and Republicans have been writing it off at least since the 1990s. There is no doubt that it's going to produce a big popular vote for whomever is the Democratic nominee, and if the rest of the country is close, of course the Democrat will win the popular vote. But it takes more than that to win the presidency.
Very interesting. I don't know why he's bent on this either. Seems like now these presidents got bigger things to do. But, you know, Donald Trump ran against the Republicans. He ran against the Democrats. He ran against the press. And he ran against 16 other fellow Republicans. And he won.
Yes.
It's just, I'm still on tilt as to the fact that we call him President Donald Trump. I'm just curious, what do you think the relationship is between the president now and the establishment Republicans?
Well, the establishment Republicans are glad to have their hands on the lever of power once again. And if you look at President Trump's cabinet and some of the key appointments he's made, like Governor Nikki Haley as UN ambassador, he certainly is not hostile to the establishment Republicans. He has not barred them from the temple. He's even invited them in to worship with him. And it's very, very clear from people who are mentioned for the sub-cabinet positions and those who are being sought out for other positions. This is an administration that will, in terms of personnel, be not unlike that would have been headed by a President John Kasich or even a President Jeb Bush. But remember, it's the person at the top who calls the policy, and it's those people who must execute it, not make it. So it will be interesting to see how the establishment Republicans respond to a president who, based on his public statements, differs with them on trade, differs with them on entitlements, differs with them on the need for infrastructure in the United States, although I know some conservative Republicans who support that. So it will be a most unique time, and as a not-so-young political reporter, it sure is going to be fun to write about.
I know you're having a heyday. Let me take a quick break. Our good friend John Gizzi is with us. He's the chief political correspondent for Newsmax. Go to newsmax.com. It's a tremendous website and a great resource. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome back to Focus Today, and always a delight and an honor to have with us my good friend John Gizzi. And he's a brother, he's a good guy, and he just does a wonderful job. He is the chief political correspondent for Newsmax. You can go to newsmax.com, subscribe, but the website itself is just terrific and a lot of great resources there. And guess what? You won't get any fake news there because John's in charge. John, all right. I've had quite a few people on. Dr. Gerard Lamero made the comment recently when I interviewed him. He said, we probably are in for maybe 1, 2, maybe even 3 generations of America being to the right of center, and the Democrats have lost it for at least that period of time. What do you think?
I always say the famous words of the philosopher Casey Stengel, one-time manager of the New York Yankees, never make predictions, especially about the future. Yeah. Look, Perry, if you had put me on 1 year ago and said, who's going to be president a year from now, and I said Donald Trump, you would have probably barred me on grounds of insanity, I would think. And much to say that Mike Pence, who was then embattled running for re-election as governor over some controversial social legislation that he signed and backed away from, that he would be a heartbeat away from the presidency. Wow. Absolute fantasy. So I don't like to predict what will happen in elections. I can remember when we used to have long talks well into the evening, other conservatives, about how Republicans would have an electoral lock on the presidency for a generation and would get to make many reforms, including the entire undoing of the social agenda of Lyndon Johnson. This was in 1988, after George H.W. Bush won what many called the third term of Ronald Reagan. Well, guess what? 4 years later, the Democratic Party, considered in shambles, was resurrected under Governor Bill Clinton, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what will happen. Who will be the new Democratic national chairman? Will he or she be able to take it from a status akin to the Labour Party in Britain under Jeremy Corbyn, or the Socialist Party in France, which is poised to nominate a very left-of-center candidate and basically nominate itself out of existence? Will Democrats go that way, or will they find a new young Bill Clinton who can rebuild the party and at least move it to the center?
Interesting.
And that's going to be an interesting story to find out and to follow.
Are the Clintons done, John?
This morning, a major contributor to Hillary Clinton told the New York press that she was 50-50 about running for mayor of New York against Bill de Blasio, who interestingly managed her 2000 race for the Senate, but took his blessed time endorsing her in the Democratic nomination fight with Bernie Sanders. If she returns as mayor, people will automatically look to her as the last remaining star in the party and someone who, like Andrew Jackson, who felt he was cheated in the 1824 election, deserves another chance. Now, she will be 73 at the time, but we're finding that we're living longer and we're electing presidents who are older.
Yeah. Any indication, John, of who President Trump may be considering for the court?
3 names are reportedly on the president's short list right now, and he's going to discuss them with Senate leaders of both parties this evening. And he'll make a decision over the weekend and announce his choice next Thursday. And that's from a Trump tweet, by the way, this morning. Right now, the 3 names before him are Neil Gorsuch, federal appeals judge in Colorado, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under George W. Bush, son of Ronald Reagan's controversial EPA administrator, Ann Gorsuch. I really know I'm getting old because I knew her quite well. Thomas Hardiman, judge of the Third Circuit from Pennsylvania, grew up in Massachusetts, went to Notre Dame, considered a superb legal scholar, and Bill Pryor of Alabama, former state attorney general, someone whose nomination to the 11th Circuit Court Democrats tried to block, and then finally a compromise between party leaders allowed an up or down vote, and he was confirmed. All of them are strict constructionists, have long records of writing some pretty conservative decisions, but first and foremost believe in interpreting the Constitution and not making law. The fact that all 3 have in different ways been targets of Democrats in the Senate tells me that a fight is inevitable. That's my column in Newsmax this morning. I might add, Donald Trump, on Valentine's Day last year, a few hours after the sad news of Justice Antonin Scalia's death, was asked what kind of justice he would name to the court. And he promptly volunteered the name of Bill Pryor of Alabama and Judge Cynthia Sykes of Wisconsin, both considered strong conservatives. Pryor has since survived on the list of 25 choices that he released with the Heritage Foundation that he'd consider for the court, and no doubt has the backing of his home state's Senator Jeff Sessions, soon to be Attorney General Sessions. Am I saying Pryor will get the nomination? I don't know. I'm saying that one of the 3, Gorsuch, Pryor, and Hardiman, should be the choice of this president, A, and B, there'll be a fight in the Senate.
Yeah, you can almost rest assured of that. Well, this is very, very interesting. The president over the last 2.5 days, John, has done a lot of executive orders, pretty much unwinding former President Barack Obama's legacy to some extent. Probably more is in play. We got the pipeline back on the table. He did go after the federal dollars, tax dollars, going to organizations that perform abortions in foreign countries. That is an indicator he's probably coming after Planned Parenthood. You think that'll happen?
Well, that's going to take congressional action, and that will be in the budget process. My personal opinion, Perry, is this. Whatever organizations that are out there that began as privately funded and receive government subsidization should all be cut loose from the federal maw of regulations that comes with all this money. Planned Parenthood is a good example. It has a lot of donors nationwide. It should survive on its own. I would go a step further and say that Catholic charities should not receive the federal dollar. And this might be a way that President Trump could sell the package. That there's other causes that certainly are unlike Planned Parenthood that nonetheless accept tax dollars and then have their mission twisted, altered, all in the name of money, and then they're subjected to the maw of federal regulations. Why not let them operate with their own contributors and be truly independent organizations? That might be a way to pursue it and to get bipartisan support on the controversial Planned Parenthood defunding, which is not defunding at all. It's just taking our tax dollars away from it.
Okay. Would you include public broadcasting in that?
Yes. And, again, Ronald Reagan pointed out that under him, communications, radio, and television were so defederalized, were so deregulated that there was a plenty of venue for alternative opinion, that we didn't need a fairness doctrine, which Perry, means that you have to provide equal time. So you would rather not allow controversial opinions on the air for fear of that. Reagan ended it. Democrats tried to revive it over the years, and it didn't happen. You could use the same logic for saying the Corporation for Public Broadcasting could be truly public, funded by private donors.
Yeah. One last question, John. What was Saturday's Women's March all about across the country? We had one big one here in Southern Oregon in Ashland. We had a fairly good-sized one in the Portland area, and it was attended by our governor, who got up and spoke. What's your take on that, and did they accomplish anything?
Okay, let me take the opportunity, Perry, to say this. My impression at first were that these were people who were not accepting the results of the election. Sore losers. I realized talking to some of them that's not what it was about. And perhaps I shouldn't have used that term on Twitter. These are people who, while they're probably disappointed in the outcome of the election, are already saying that the administration will take a hostile turn toward what they view as women's rights. Now, that's fine for them to go out. I wish, though, that they would give this president, say, 100 days before they started demonstrating. I would urge my friends, you don't call names, but I would also say to them, you hold your tongue about this president and see what he does. And then 100 days, if you want to march, you march. Now, again, I talked to a few of the marchers out here in Washington who were afraid of just what you mentioned, the defunding of Planned Parenthood. They were also nervous about Education Secretary designate Betsy DeVos and whether she's committed to the public education system. So I would describe it as people who fear what a Trump administration could do. My advice to them would be, why don't you give this president 100 days? And remember something, Donald Trump is someone who worked with minorities and women in the private sector, many of whom praise his work. He is probably the Republican nominee most friendly to the gay community. He even used the term LGBTQ in his acceptance speech, which was unheard of at a Republican convention, and he's a New Yorker. So I'm saying with Trump, there's a lot over there that people are going to like, that some will dislike, but a lot of what's there is going to be a leap into the unknown. Yeah. So give him 100 days, okay?
In 100 days, I'm going to have you back, John. You're a delight. Good to see your smiling face. I will say I miss your iconic hat. It does make you look very distinguished. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to Newsmax.com and check out John's articles on a daily basis. Thank you, brother. Good to see you. Stay in touch, okay?
and I'll wear Begora the fedora next time.
You're the man. Okay, thanks, John. See you then. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.